heavy quarterback draft. I mean, we're expecting Malik Willis to go in the first round despite that.
I was wrong on that puppy.
But yes, well, he fell to the second day. Tennessee drafted him in the third round. Kind of took advantage of him slipping, but also made a little bit of an interesting move because they traded the 90th and the 169th pick to the Raiders to move up to select Willis at number 86. So while he did slip in the draft, based off of, with all of the projections, although this is probably where he would be drafted if we did have high star quarterbacks in the draft. So in reality, for what his grade was, he probably went where he would normally go.
Right.
But I do think it's interesting that Tennessee still made a move to get him, even though he did go in the third round.
Well, they liked him, but they didn't want to, in their opinion, reach.
Right.
And by the way, this is the perfect place for him. Good GM, strong coach, starting quarterback, good run game. This is not a place where you're going to come in and save the franchise. Right. So this, I told my wife this. I said, because she didn't follow this stuff, I said, you watch this draft and your heart goes out to these young kids. But if you look at the history of the draft, the quarterbacks that dropped, Dan Marino, Aaron Rodgers, always end up going to a more sane, more reputable organization. So he ends up going, let's be honest. As long as Mike Vrabel's there, this is going to be either a playoff team or battle for first in the division. So it's that's where you want to go.
Right. Well, if you slip in the draft, you're generally not going to a team that is picking at the top of the draft. Obviously, that's why you're slipping. The teams that pick at the top of the draft are usually bad. That's why they're at the top of the draft. So there's some aberrations, of course, where everyone gets injured and the Niners have a great pick, even though they're a good team.
Well, think about this. If he gets drafted by Carolina, A, they're going to ask him to play early.
Right.
B, he's going to be in the middle of a quarterback controversy from the first day, and it's a bad roster. So, you think, you make your money in this league on your second, third, and fourth contracts. Now, quarterbacks do get a fourth contract, usually, because they don't get hit as much. So, Malik will be fine. I look at this. I look at Kenny Pickett and him, and I think, perfect. They don't have to start year one.
They don't have to start year. Well, Kenny, I don't know.
He may win the job.
That depends on how it goes in camp.
That's right.
He's in a little bit of a different situation than Malik as far as when he will play. But there are a lot of people who are not sold on Ryan Tannehill moving forward. And, obviously he's going to be the quarterback for this year. They did say that they didn't consult him before drafting Malik Willis. I don't think you need to consult with your starting quarterback if you take a quarterback in the third round.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a conversation you have to have. If you're going to draft someone in the first round, I think you owe them a text message. Or a phone call.
Right.
But third round, you don't need to run your draft by your quarterback. But, the Titans' last 3 seasons, 2019, they lost in the AFC Championship game. 2020, they lost in the wild card. And 2021, they lost in the divisional round as the number 1 seed to the Bengals. And sacked Joe Burrow, 9 times in that game?
They feel like they outplayed the Super Bowl participants. They should. They did. And lost. So,
but they're always just right there.
Yes.
So there are people in Tennessee who are Ryan Tannehill might not be the guy. So I don't think this is a replacement situation for this year, obviously. But, he's a good guy to be sitting behind as well and in a stable organization. So, as you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, the Packers finally got some wide receiver depth on days 2 and 3 of the draft. They traded up in the second round to get the North Dakota State receiver Christian Watson with the 34th overall pick. Now, this is an interesting pick for the Packers because some people had him as a first-round grade. And
you know who the comp is, and it's totally on? Vincent Jackson. So Vincent Jackson was this 6'4.5" receiver, very good wide receiver. And I heard it this weekend during the draft coverage. Somebody said, he's Vincent Jackson. I'm like, that's exactly what he is. And I think he's going to be a really good player. And Green Bay has a history of drafting receivers second, third, fourth, and they end up being really good players. They just don't become great players initially. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if by his second year, he's their number 1 target.
Well, I love this pick for the Packers, and I like that he went there, and obviously he's working with Aaron Rodgers, and he said he wants Aaron Rodgers to be tough on him so he can become the best player he can be. The thing that's confusing to me about how the Packers do business, though, is they're very much in a win-now situation. You moved up Devontae Adams, who is unequivocally a number 1 receiver, and now you'll be relying on rookies and mostly 2s and 3s.
Oh, yeah. 3s and 4s. Yeah.
Right. So they have Allen Lazard, Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb, Juwan Winfrey, Amari Rodgers, Malik Taylor, and then they have 3 rookies because they took Romeo Doubs, in the 4th round.
Yeah.
and Samori Toure in the 7th round.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're good enough there, but
I mean, they have a lot.
I will say this. They got a great linebacker out of Georgia in the 1st round. So that I love their first pick, actually. And all my scout buddies are like, that kid's going to star. I mean, good God. Georgia defensive players, just draft them.
Well, let's speak about that. Georgia followed up their national championship with the strongest showing in the NFL draft. 15 players from the Bulldogs were selected this year, including Trayvon Walker with the 1st overall pick. So that sets the record for the most players taken from one school in a 7-round draft. The previous holders were Ohio State in 2004 and LSU in 2020. Both had 14 players taken. So how about that for some recruiting juice?
One of them, just to show you how much talent they have, in the 6th round, the Chargers took a guard. And I think it's Jamari Salyer. He will absolutely make that team. And the Chargers have a good roster. It's not a rebuilding roster. The Chargers have a stacked roster, and they drafted in the 6th round a guard from Georgia. He will make that team. Okay, that's how good Georgia is. When we watched Georgia play Alabama, and you and I don't think this very much, it was one of the few times where you watched Alabama and Saban and you're like, yeah, the other team has more good players. LSU with Joe Burrow when they beat him,
yes.
You were like, oh, LSU's got more good players than Alabama. That's happened like twice in Saban's 13 years.
Well, and there's a speed component
to
it that is very visible and obvious.
Yes.
It's not a surprise to me that this many Georgia players went. What is a surprise is that Texas did not have any players drafted this year.
Is that crazy? Oh. Texas do. Milwaukee makes you play their game. Boston made the Nets play their game. Milwaukee said, that's cute. Now you're going to play our game. Boston has no chance to score inside. They're going to be very perimeter-based in this series, and I do think they'll shoot their way to several wins. I don't think it will be 4, probably 2, maybe 3. But what we're looking at now with Giannis, and I always liked Giannis. He was a great kid. But I was like, years ago, I'm like, everybody said he's going to take the league over like LeBron. And I'm like, well, LeBron runs the offense. He's the de facto point guard. He's a great facilitator. But Giannis is gotten so good at facilitating and passing. He's gotten better at shooting. We are looking at a longer, taller version of LeBron in his prime. They run the entire offense through both. You surround them with shooters. They can facilitate. Other great players. Embiid needs somebody to start the offense. Tatum, better with a point guard. Kawhi, better off the ball. And those are great players. So Giannis has become LeBron to me. He's the best offensive closer on the floor, the best overall offensive player. It's not Durant. It's Giannis because he can score out or in with authority. He can facilitate. He's the best closer. He's got a high IQ. He also understands. He's got a keen understanding of when to turn it on and what the team needs. So Chris Middleton gets hurt. Shocker. He's averaged 8 assists since then. That is so LeBron, it's painful. And since, by the way, Middleton has been hurt, the Bucks have won by 30, 24, 16, and 12. And I mean, that thing yesterday was not close. It was not close. Had Giannis not missed several gimmies early, it would have been a blowout sooner. So, and a great example of this is Al Horford was really, really good and effective against Brooklyn. He was irrelevant yesterday. He was irrelevant. That's because great clarifies. LeBron always did that. Is Derrick Rose really the MVP? Are these teams in the East any good? And you'd be like, nah, LeBron swept them. And that's what I always said about Andrew Luck, the quarterback. Can you come into the NFL with an average roster and win? And Andrew Luck won 11 games with a garbage roster. It's like, yeah, if you're good, you can. It clarifies. And that's what Giannis is doing. He is eliminating Boston's inside game. He's really basically turned them into a perimeter team, and they're good enough and well-coached enough and have good enough players. Now, Marcus Smart is now hurt. He'll play, but he's hurt. That is bad news for Boston. Tatum's the best player. I could argue Marcus Smart's the soul of the team. But I think what we're watching is, and I really noticed it at the end of the playoffs last year. I always thought Giannis was great, but at the end of the playoffs last year, a couple of those, can he close? Can he hit the jumper late? Can he hit free throws late? Check, check, check. This is the best player in the league. He should be the MVP. You could give it to him for 8 to 10 straight years. He won't win it because NBA voters tend to, they like new and fresh stories. I get it. The media likes, new and different. But this is the best player in the league, and he's clarifying everything. And if you have any questions about, does this work or that work, Giannis will give you an answer. They're better without Middleton against Chicago. And that thing yesterday, Boston's a good team, and Boston's a well-coached team. And they were completely, utterly out of sorts in the first half offensively. Could just not find their way because of one guy. Joy Taylor with the news.
No. Herd on the news. This is the Herd Line News.